It starts with a promise. A weekend at the beach, saltwater taffy and sand castles. A 4-year-old girl waving goodbye to her parents, excited for an adventure with family friends she trusted. But when Sunday night came and went, that little girl never came home. For more than 30 decades, her family would search. Investigators would chase ghosts across state lines, and a quiet neighborhood in Pennsylvania would be haunted by a single, unanswerable question. What happened to Lily Cooper? Because sometimes the people you trust the most are the ones hiding the darkest secrets. And sometimes the truth doesn't surface for 31 years. In this video, we're going to walk through what we know about one of the most disturbing parental abduction cases in American history. A case where the monsters didn't wear masks, they wore smiles. They brought casseroles to potlucks. They were your neighbors. This is the story of Lily Marie Cooper, and this is what happens when trust becomes a weapon. Millbrook, Pennsylvania. Summer 1990. It's a steel town, blue collar, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, where kids ride bikes until the streetlights flicker on, where front doors stay unlocked and neighbors borrow sugar without knocking. The Cooper family fits right in. David Cooper works the day shift at Millbrook Steel and Fabrication. His wife, Patricia, volunteers at the public library on Tuesdays and Thursdays, shelving books and running story time for toddlers. And their daughter, Lily Marie Cooper, just turned 4 in April. Lily is small for her age, blonde curls that bounce when she runs, a gap-toothed smile. She loves Sesame Street, coloring books, and her stuffed rabbit named Clover. By all accounts, she's a happy kid, bright, curious, the kind of little girl who asks 1,000 questions and giggles at her own jokes. The Coopers aren't wealthy, but they're doing okay. They have a modest 2-bedroom home on Maple Street, a fenced-in backyard, a vegetable garden Patricia tends on weekends. It's a good life, a simple life. And in the summer of 1990, they have no reason to believe any of that is about to change. Enter Frank and Carol Hayes. The Hayes family moved to Millbrook 3 years earlier, in 1987. Frank is a machinist, also working at Millbrook Steel. That's how he and David first met, on the floor, trading stories during lunch breaks. Frank is quiet, methodical, keeps to himself but friendly enough when approached. Carol is warmer, more outgoing. She's a homemaker, but she volunteers at the library alongside Patricia. The two women bond over books, over raising kids in a small town, over the shared rhythm of domestic life. Within months, the Coopers and the Hayes become close. Not best friends exactly, but solid, trustworthy. The kind of friends you invite to backyard barbecues, the kind who watch your house when you're out of town, and crucially, the kind you trust with your child. Because here's the thing, Frank and Carol have a daughter too. Her name is Emily. She's 6 years old, 2 years older than Lily, and the girls play together sometimes when the families get together. Patricia Cooper will later say she felt comfortable around the Hayes family because they understood what it was like to raise a young daughter. They had one of their own. Except they didn't, not anymore. But the Coopers don't know that yet. In early July 1990, Carol Hayes approaches Patricia at the library. She's cheerful, excited. She tells Patricia that she and Frank are planning a weekend trip to the beach, Ocean City, Maryland. It's only a few hours away and they're taking Emily. Would Lily like to come along? Patricia hesitates. It's a big ask, a whole weekend. But Carol is persuasive. She reminds Patricia that the girls love playing together, that it'll be good for Lily to get out of Millbrook for a few days, see the ocean, build some memories. Plus, Patricia and David could use a break, couldn't they? A quiet weekend to themselves? So Patricia talks it over with David that night. They weigh the pros and cons. They trust the Hayes family. They've known them for 3 years. They've been to their home, shared meals, celebrated birthdays. Frank and David work together. Carol and Patricia volunteer together. There's no red flag, no reason to say no. So they say yes. The plan is simple. The Hayeses will pick up Lily on Friday afternoon, July 13th, 1990. They'll drive to Ocean City, spend Saturday and Sunday at the beach, and bring Lily home Sunday evening by 7. It's all arranged. Lily is thrilled. Patricia packs her a little suitcase, shorts, t-shirts, a swimsuit, sunscreen, Clover the rabbit. She reminds Lily to listen to Mr. and Mrs. Hayes, to be polite, to have fun. And on Friday, July 13th, 1990, just after 3 in the afternoon, Frank and Carol Hayes pull up in front of the Cooper home in their blue Chevy sedan. Lily runs out to meet them, her little suitcase bouncing against her legs. Patricia walks her to the car, hugs her tight, tells her to be good. Carol leans out the window, smiling. "We'll take good care of her, don't you worry." David wades from the porch. Frank gives a nod, starts the engine. And just like that, Lily Cooper is gone. If you're finding this case as unsettling as we are, please consider hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. We cover cases like this every week, diving deep into the investigations, the timelines, and the unbelievable twists that most people never hear about. Your support helps us keep bringing these stories to light. Saturday passes without incident. The Coopers enjoy their quiet weekend. They sleep in, go out for dinner, catch a movie. They miss Lily, of course, but they're happy she's having an adventure. Patricia wonders if Lily is collecting seashells, if she's scared of the waves, if she's eating too much ice cream. Normal parent thoughts. Sunday morning, Patricia starts tidying Lily's room, getting it ready for her return. She washes the sheets, fluffs the pillows, sets Lily's favorite storybook on the nightstand. By late afternoon, she's watching the clock. 7 o'clock. That's when the Hayeses said they'd be back. 7 comes and goes. No knock at the door, no headlights in the driveway. By 7:30, Patricia's unease has turned to panic. She wants to call the police, but David talks her down. He says, let's give it until 10. Maybe their car broke down. Maybe they stopped for dinner and lost track of time. There's probably a reasonable explanation. But 10 o'clock comes, then 11, midnight, and the Hayes family never shows up. At 6 in the morning on Monday, July 16th, 1990, David Cooper walks into the Millbrook Police Department and reports his daughter missing. The officer behind the desk, Sergeant Tom Brennan, listens carefully. He takes notes. He asks the obvious questions. When did you last see her? Who was she with? What kind of car were they driving? David gives him everything. The Hayes family, blue Chevy, Pennsylvania plates, though he can't remember the exact number. They were supposed to be at Ocean City. They were supposed to bring Lily home Sunday night. Brennan picks up the phone and calls the Hayes residence. No answer. He dispatches a patrol unit to their address, a small ranch house on the east side of Millbrook, about 2 miles from the Coopers. The officers arrive at the Hayes home just after 7. They knock. No answer. They peer through the windows. The house looks empty. No furniture visible in the living room. No cars in the driveway. They call Brennan. He tells them to wait. He's coming down himself. When Brennan arrives, he tries the door. Locked. He circles the property, checks the back door, looks in the garage. Empty. Completely empty. Not a single car, not a single box, not a single sign of life. He makes a decision. He gets a warrant, and by noon, they're inside. The house has been cleared out. Totally. No furniture, no personal belongings, no dishes in the kitchen, No clothes in the closets. The only things left behind are a few pieces of trash in the garage, an old phone book, some junk mail, and a thin layer of dust on the windowsills that suggests no one has been here in days, maybe a week. Brennan stands in the empty living room and feels his stomach drop. Because this isn't a family that went to the beach and got delayed. This is a family that planned to disappear. He radios back to the station. He tells them to put out an alert. Lily Marie Cooper, 4 years old, blonde hair, blue eyes, last seen July 13 with Frank and Carol Hayes, blue Chevy sedan, Pennsylvania plates, possible abduction. The dispatcher asks if they should contact the FBI. Brennan doesn't hesitate. Yes, do it now. Within hours, the case explodes. The Millbrook PD reaches out to Maryland State Police, alerting them to check Ocean City and surrounding beach towns. They contact Pennsylvania State Police, issuing a statewide alert for the Hayes vehicle. The FBI's Crimes Against Children Division is notified, and by late Monday afternoon, 2 agents are en route to Millbrook. Patricia and David Cooper are brought in for interviews. They're cooperative, frantic, desperate. They tell investigators everything they know about the Hayes family, the friendship, the trust, the weekend trip. But when the FBI starts asking deeper questions, the Coopers realize how little they actually know. Where did the Hayeses live before Millbrook? They're not sure. Frank mentioned something about Ohio once, maybe. Do they have extended family? The Coopers don't know. Carol never talked about her parents, and Frank never mentioned siblings. What about their daughter, Emily? Where is she? And that's when things get strange. Because when investigators start digging into the Hayes family background, they find something unsettling. There is no Emily Hayes enrolled in Millbrook Elementary. There's no birth certificate on file in Pennsylvania for an Emily Hayes matching the age Carol described. In fact, there's no record of Emily Hayes at all. Patricia Cooper insists she met Emily. She saw her multiple times, playing with Lily at backyard gatherings. But when pressed for details, her memory is fuzzy. Emily was quiet, she says, shy. She didn't talk much. And now that Patricia thinks about it, she realizes she never actually saw Emily and Carol together very often. Emily would be outside playing while Carol chatted with the adults, or Emily would be upstairs in her room when Patricia visited the Hayes house. The FBI asks if Patricia ever saw a photo of Emily in the Hayes home. She can't remember one. They ask if Emily ever came to the library with Carol. Patricia pauses. No, she realizes, she never did. And slowly, a horrifying possibility begins to take shape. What if Emily Hayes didn't exist anymore? What if something had happened to her and Frank and Carol were hiding it? Or worse, what if they had lost a child and were trying to replace her? The investigation moves fast. By Wednesday, July 18, the FBI has tracked down Frank Hayes' employment records at Millbrook Steel. He worked there for 3 years, just as David Cooper confirmed. But before that, the trail gets murky. The Social Security number on file is legitimate, but it's only been active since 1985. Before that, nothing. Carol Hayes is even more elusive. She has no employment history, no credit history, no paper trail at all before 1987. It's as if both Frank and Carol Hayes materialized out of thin air just a few years earlier. The FBI expands the search. They contact the DMV, pull records for the blue Chevy sedan. It's registered to Frank Hayes at the Millbrook address, purchased in 1988. But when they run the VIN, they discover something strange. The car was bought with cash. No loan, no financing, just a lump sum payment of $4,200. Who pays cash for a car in 1988 unless they're trying to avoid a paper trail? Agents canvass the neighborhood around the Hayes home. They knock on doors, ask questions. Most neighbors barely knew Frank and Carol. They were polite but distant, kept to themselves. One neighbor, an older woman named Margaret Finch, remembers seeing Carol in the yard occasionally, tending to a small flower bed, but she never saw a child, not once. Another neighbor, a man named Joe Parsons, remembers Frank loading boxes into the Chevy late at night about a week before Lily disappeared. He thought it was strange at the time, but didn't think much of it. People move, it happens. But now it looks like Frank and Carol Hayes spent at least a week, maybe longer, packing up their entire lives in secret, preparing to vanish. The question is, why? And more importantly, where did they go? By the end of July, the search for Lily Cooper becomes a national story. Her face is on the news. Flyers are distributed across Pennsylvania, Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey. The FBI coordinates with local agencies in every state along the eastern seaboard, checking hotels, motels, campgrounds. They contact the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which adds Lily to its database and produces age progression images. Patricia and David Cooper appear on television pleading for Lily's safe return. Patricia breaks down on camera, begging Frank and Carol to bring her baby home. David sits beside her, stone-faced, his hands trembling. But weeks pass, then months, and there's nothing. No sightings, no leads, no trace of the blue Chevy or the Hayes family. It's as if they drove off the edge of the earth. In August, a potential break. A woman in Ohio calls a tip line, says she saw a little blonde girl matching Lily's description at a rest stop outside Columbus. She was with an older couple, a man and a woman, and the girl seemed quiet, subdued. The FBI dispatches agents immediately, but by the time they arrive, the family is long gone. Security footage from the rest stop is grainy, inconclusive. It might be Lily, it might not. In September, another tip. A gas station attendant in Indiana thinks he remembers a blue Chevy with Pennsylvania plates stopping for fuel. The man paid cash, didn't make eye contact, and there was a little girl asleep in the back seat. Again, agents investigate. Again, the trail goes cold. By October, the leads start to dry up. The story fades from the headlines. The Coopers are left waiting, hoping, praying. Patricia starts a journal, writing letters to Lily every night, telling her about her day, about how much they miss her, about how they'll never stop looking. David quits his job at the steel mill. He can't bear to see the empty spot where Frank Hayes used to stand. He takes a job at a warehouse across town, something mindless, something that doesn't remind him of the man who stole his daughter. And the investigation continues, but quietly now. The FBI keeps the case open, keeps chasing tips, but resources are finite. Other cases demand attention. The years start to slip by. 1991, 1992, 1993. Lily's 5th birthday passes, then her 6th, then her 7th. The Coopers never stop searching. They never give up hope. But hope, when stretched across years, starts to feel like a kind of torture. Because with every passing year, Lily is growing up somewhere, without them, with people who stole her. And the Coopers are haunted by the same questions every single day. Is she safe? Is she scared? Does she remember them? Does she even know who she really is? Then, in 1995, 5 years after Lily disappeared, the FBI gets a break. A small one, but a break nonetheless. A letter. It's discovered during a routine investigation into a mail fraud case in Portland, Oregon. Federal agents executing a search warrant on a suspect's property find a stack of old correspondence in a storage unit. Most of it's junk, but one letter, dated April 1990, catches an agent's eye. It's addressed to a Carol M., no last name, at a P.O. box in Portland, and the return address is from Millbrook, Pennsylvania. And the letter, written in neat, looping handwriting, talks about finally being ready and starting fresh and the plans we discussed. The agent doesn't make the connection immediately, but when the letter is logged into evidence and cross-referenced with other ongoing cases, a keyword search flags it. Millbrook, Pennsylvania. Carol. The letter is sent to the FBI field office handling the Lily Cooper case. Agents analyze it, compare the handwriting to samples from Carol's library volunteer forms. It's a match. The letter is vague, careful, but it suggests that Carol Hayes was in contact with someone in Portland months before Lily disappeared, someone who was helping her plan something. The tone is cautious, almost coded, but the implication is clear. This wasn't a spontaneous abduction. This was premeditated. The FBI descends on Portland. They track down the P.O. box, but it was closed in 1991. The forwarding address leads to an apartment complex that's since been demolished. They interview postal workers, landlords, anyone who might remember a woman matching Carol Hayes' description. But it's been 5 years. Memories are hazy. People have moved on. Still, it's something. It's a direction. For the first time since Lily vanished, the FBI has a geographic anchor, Portland, Oregon. But Portland is a big city, and if Frank and Carol Hayes are there, they're hiding in plain sight. The investigation in Portland continues through 1996 and into 1997, but it's slow, painstaking work. Agents check school enrollment records, looking for a girl named Emily Hayes or any child matching Lily's description. They cross-reference utility bills, tax records, rental agreements. They visit churches, community centers, libraries. They show Lily's photo to hundreds of people. Nothing. By 1998, the trail is cold again. The FBI scales back the search, though the case remains open. Patricia and David Cooper visit Portland twice, walking the streets, handing out flyers, doing television interviews on local news stations, but it feels like shouting into the void. And the years keep passing. 1999, 2000, the new millennium arrives, and Lily Cooper, wherever she is now 14 years old, a teenager. The age progression photos show a young woman with blonde hair and delicate features, but they're just guesses, approximations. The Coopers don't know what their daughter really looks like anymore. The case becomes one of those stories, the kind that true crime enthusiasts revisit every few years, the kind that gets mentioned in documentaries about unsolved abductions, the kind where people shake their heads and wonder what could have been done differently. But for Patricia and David Cooper, it's not a story. It's their life. It's the empty bedroom down the hall. It's the birthday cakes they still bake every April, just in case. It's the phone calls they still hope will come. It's the waiting that never ends. And then, in May 2021, 31 years after Lily Cooper disappeared, a woman walks into a passport office in Portland, Oregon. Her name is Jessica Martin. She's applying for a passport for the first time. She's 35 years old, she explains to the clerk, and she's never traveled outside the country before. But she's planning a trip, and she needs the paperwork in order. The clerk is friendly, efficient. She asks for Jessica's birth certificate. Jessica hesitates. She explains that she doesn't have it. She was homeschooled, she says, and her parents were complicated. They passed away, and she never got around to requesting a copy. The clerk nods sympathetically. She's heard stories like this before. She explains that without a birth certificate, the process will be more complicated. She'll need to submit additional documentation, maybe get a delayed birth certificate from the state. But then the clerk does something routine, something she's supposed to do in cases like this. She runs Jessica Martin's name and date of birth through a federal database, just to check if there are any flags, any issues that might complicate the application. And the system lights up. Because Jessica Martin, born April 1986, does not exist. There is no birth record, no social security number issued at birth, no hospital records, nothing. But there is a match in another database, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. The clerk's hands start to shake as she reads the screen. Blonde hair, blue eyes, age progression match, possible identification, Lily Marie Cooper, missing since July 13, 1990. The clerk excuses herself. She walks to the back office, her heart pounding, and she calls her supervisor. The supervisor makes another call, and within 30 minutes, 2 FBI agents are en route to the passport office. Jessica Martin is asked to wait in a private room. She's confused, frightened. She doesn't understand what's happening. The agents arrive, and they're calm, professional, but firm. They explain that there's been a discrepancy with her identification. They'd like to ask you a few questions, if that's okay. Jessica agrees. She's nervous, but she's cooperative. She tells them what she knows. Her name is Jessica Martin. She grew up in Portland. She was homeschooled by her parents, Frank and Carol Martin. They moved around a lot when she was younger, she says, but they settled in Portland when she was about 5 or 6. She doesn't have many memories before that, just fragments. A long car ride, a new house, her mother telling her they were starting a new adventure. The agents ask about her parents. Her face falls. Frank died 2 years ago, she says, in 2019, cancer. Carol is still alive, living in a small apartment in southeast Portland. She's elderly now, frail, her memory isn't what it used to be. The agents exchange a glance. They ask Jessica if she'd be willing to provide a DNA sample, just to rule some things out, they say. It's voluntary, but it would help. Jessica hesitates. She doesn't understand why they need her DNA, but she agrees. She wants to cooperate. She wants to clear this up. A cheek swab is taken. It's sent to the lab for expedited processing, and 3 days later, the results come back. Jessica Martin is Lily Marie Cooper. The woman sitting in that passport office, 35 years old, living a quiet life in Portland, is the 4-year-old girl who disappeared from Millbrook, Pennsylvania on July 13, 1990. She's been missing for 31 years, and she had no idea. The FBI agent who delivers the news to Jessica Martin is a woman named Sandra Hewitt. She's been with the Bureau for 16 years, worked dozens of missing persons cases, but she's never had to do anything like this. She sits across from Jessica in a small, sterile conference room at the Portland field office, and she chooses her words carefully. Jessica, the DNA results came back, and we need to talk about who you really are. Jessica stares at her, uncomprehending. She's clutching her purse in her lap, her knuckles white. She thinks maybe there's been a mistake with her identity, some bureaucratic error that's going to take weeks to untangle. She doesn't understand why this requires the FBI. Agent Hewitt slides a folder across the table. Inside is a photograph. A little blonde girl, maybe 4 years old, wearing a yellow sundress and holding a stuffed rabbit. The girl is smiling, gap-toothed and bright-eyed. Do you recognize this child? Jessica looks at the photo. She doesn't recognize the girl, but something about the rabbit feels familiar. A distant, hazy memory. She can't place it. No, she says. I don't think so. Hewitt takes a breath. Jessica, this is a photo of Lily Marie Cooper. She was taken from her home in Millbrook, Pennsylvania on July 13, 1990. She was 4 years old. She was abducted by 2 people her family trusted, a man named Frank Hayes and a woman named Carol Hayes. Jessica's face goes pale. Hayes. Her mother's maiden name, she suddenly remembers. Carol used to tell her stories about growing up as Carol Hayes before she married Frank Martin. But they weren't Martins, were they? Hewitt continues, her voice steady but gentle. The DNA test confirms that you are Lily Marie Cooper. The people who raised you, Frank and Carol Martin, were Frank and Carol Hayes. They abducted you 31 years ago and disappeared. Your biological parents, David and Patricia Cooper, have been looking for you ever since. The room tilts. Jessica feels like she's falling, even though she's sitting down. Her mind scrambles for purchase, for something solid to hold on to, but everything is slipping away. Her name isn't Jessica. Her parents aren't her parents. Her entire life is a lie. She tries to speak, but no words come out. She tries to breathe, but her lungs won't cooperate. Agent Hewitt reaches across the table, places a hand on her arm. "I know this is overwhelming," she says, "and I'm so sorry, but we're going to help you through this. You're safe now, and your family, your biological family, they've never stopped looking for you." Jessica finally finds her voice, and it comes out as a whisper. "They're alive?" "Yes," Hewitt says, "they're alive, and they've been waiting for this moment for 31 years. The next 72 hours are a blur. Jessica, or Lily, she doesn't even know what to call herself anymore, is placed in protective custody while the FBI builds its case against Carol Hayes. Agents descend on Carol's apartment in southeast Portland, and they find an elderly woman, 74 years old, living alone in a one-bedroom unit that smells like mothballs and old books. When they tell her why they're there, Carol doesn't run. She doesn't resist. She just sits down on her faded couch and starts to cry. She confesses everything, not because she's been caught, though she has been, but because, she says, she's been carrying this weight for 31 years and she's too tired to carry it anymore. The interrogation is recorded. Carol sits across from two agents, her hands folded in her lap, her voice barely above a whisper. She tells them about Emily. Emily Hayes was real. She was born in April 1984 in Cleveland, Ohio, Frank and Carol's only child, a beautiful, bright little girl with dark hair and green eyes. She loved drawing, loved animals, loved making up stories. She was everything to them. In early 1989, Emily was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia. She was 5 years old. Frank and Carol did everything they could. Chemotherapy, radiation, experimental treatments. They drained their savings. They prayed. They begged God for a miracle. Emily died on November 3, 1989. She was 6 years old. Carol's voice breaks as she talks about the funeral, about the tiny casket, about the way Frank couldn't stop crying, couldn't function, couldn't do anything but sit in Emily's empty bedroom and stare at the walls. The grief destroyed them. Carol says they stopped eating, stopped sleeping, stopped living. Frank took a leave of absence from work. Carol stopped going outside. The world became unbearable because their daughter wasn't in it anymore. And then, Carol says, Frank came to her with an idea. It started as a fantasy, she explains, a way to cope. Frank would talk about what it would be like if they could just start over, if they could have another daughter, if they could leave behind the pain and the memories and build a new life somewhere else. At first, Carol thought he was just grieving. She didn't take it seriously, but Frank kept talking about it. He started making plans. He said they could move, change their names, find a little girl who needed a family, an orphan maybe, or a child in foster care. But that wasn't what Frank had in mind. In early 1990, Frank got a job at Millbrook Steel in Pennsylvania. Carol didn't want to go, but Frank convinced her. A fresh start, he said. A new town. No one who knew about Emily. No one who would look at them with pity. They moved to Millbrook in March 1990, and within weeks, Frank had befriended David Cooper, and Carol had befriended Patricia Cooper, and they had met Lily. Carol insists it wasn't the plan from the beginning. She says they genuinely liked the Coopers. They became real friends. But Lily reminded Frank so much of Emily, the blonde hair, the bright smile, the way she laughed. And slowly, Carol says, Frank's fantasy started to harden into a plan. He told Carol they could take Lily, just for a while, he said, just to feel what it was like to have a daughter again. They'd bring her back eventually, no harm done. But Carol knew that wasn't true. She knew once they took Lily, there was no bringing her back. And Carol said no. She told him it was insane. She told him they'd go to prison. Frank didn't care. He said he couldn't live without a daughter. He said if Carol loved him, she'd help him. He said this was their only chance to be happy again. And Carol, broken and grieving and desperate to hold on to the only person she had left, said yes. They spent months planning. Frank contacted an old friend in Portland, someone he'd known years ago, someone who asked no questions and offered them a place to stay. Carol started packing, slowly, quietly, a few boxes at a time. They withdrew their savings in cash. They quit their jobs, but didn't tell anyone. And when the opportunity came, when Patricia Cooper agreed to let Lily spend a weekend with them, they took it. On July 13, 1990, Frank and Carol Hayes picked up Lily Cooper, drove out of Millbrook, and kept driving. They didn't go to Ocean City. They went west, through Pennsylvania, through Ohio, through Indiana, through the heartland, all the way to Oregon. It took them 4 days. They stopped at cheap motels, paid cash, avoided cameras. Lily cried at first. She asked for her mommy and daddy, but Frank and Carol told her there had been an accident, a car accident. Her parents were hurt, they said, and she needed to stay with them for a while. She was so young, Carol says, and she believed them. By the time they reached Portland, Lily had stopped asking about her parents. She was confused, scared, but she trusted Frank and Carol. They were familiar. They were safe. They moved into a small house on the outskirts of the city, paid cash for 6 months' rent up front. They changed their last name to Martin. They told neighbors they were a quiet family, homeschooling their daughter, keeping to themselves. And they taught Lily that her name was Jessica, that she'd always been Jessica, that her life before Portland was just a dream, just her imagination. Carol admits they isolated her. No school, no friends, no contact with the outside world. They were terrified someone would recognize her, that Lily would say something, that the truth would come out. So they kept her inside, taught her at home, controlled every aspect of her life. But they loved her, Carol insists. They gave her everything they could: books, toys, art supplies. They celebrated her birthday every year. They read to her every night. They tried to make her happy. And over time, Lily forgot. Or maybe she didn't forget, but the memories became so distant and distorted that they didn't feel real anymore. By the time she was 10, she genuinely believed she was Jessica Martin, that Frank and Carol were her parents, that her life had always been this quiet, isolated existence in Portland. Carol's voice is thick with tears as she finishes. She says she knows what they did was monstrous. She knows they stole Lily's life, her family, her identity. She says there's no excuse, no justification, but she wants Jessica to know that they loved her, that every day, even though it was built on a lie, they tried to give her a good life. The agents sit in silence when she finishes. Then one of them asks the question that's been hanging in the air. Why didn't you ever let her go? Carol looks down at her hands. Because we couldn't, she whispers. Once we took her, we couldn't undo it. We'd already destroyed her life. Bringing her back would just destroy ours too. So we kept going. We kept pretending. And we told ourselves that as long as she was happy, it was okay. But it was never okay, and Carol knows that now. She's arrested and charged with kidnapping, child abduction, and conspiracy. Because Frank is dead, he'll never face trial, but Carol will. Her bail is denied. She's considered a flight risk, even though at 74, she's too frail to run. While Carol sits in a jail cell in Portland, the FBI makes the call that will change everything. They contact David and Patricia Cooper in Pennsylvania. It's May 18, 2021, a Tuesday. Patricia is in the kitchen making lunch when the phone rings. David is in the garage fixing a leaky faucet. He hears Patricia scream and he drops his tools and runs inside. Patricia is on the floor, the phone still pressed to her ear, sobbing so hard she can't breathe. David grabs the phone from her hand, terrified, and the voice on the other end says, "Mr. Cooper, this is Special Agent Sandra Hewitt with the FBI. I'm calling about your daughter." David's heart stops. He thinks they've found a body. He thinks this is the call they've been dreading for 31 years. The call that says Lily is gone forever. But Agent Hewitt says, "Mr. Cooper, we found her. Lily is alive. She's safe, and she's in Portland, Oregon." David collapses onto the floor next to Patricia, and they hold each other and cry. And for the first time in 3 decades, the tears are not born of grief. They're born of relief, of disbelief, of a joy so overwhelming it feels almost painful. Lily is alive. Their daughter is alive. The reunion is arranged carefully. The FBI knows this is delicate. Jessica, who is still struggling to process the fact that she's Lily, is fragile. She's been told her entire life is a lie, that the people who raised her are criminals, that she has a family she doesn't remember. It's traumatic in ways most people can't even comprehend. Agent Hewitt suggests a video call first, something low pressure, a chance for Jessica and her biological parents to see each other, to talk, without the intensity of an in-person meeting. On May 21, 2021, 4 days after the DNA results came back, Jessica sits in a conference room at the FBI field office in Portland. Her laptop is open in front of her. Her hands are shaking. On the other side of the country, in Millbrook, Pennsylvania, David and Patricia Cooper sit in their living room, staring at a laptop screen, holding hands so tightly their fingers are numb. Agent Hewitt facilitates. She starts the video call, and for the first time in 31 years, Lily Marie Cooper and her parents see each other. Patricia gasps, because even though Jessica is 35 now, even though she's a grown woman with a life and a history Patricia knows nothing about, she can still see her daughter in that face. The blonde hair, now darker but still recognizable. The blue eyes, the delicate features. David can't speak. He just stares, tears streaming down his face. Jessica looks at them, these strangers who are supposed to be her parents, and she feels nothing. No recognition, no connection, just confusion and grief and an overwhelming sense of loss for the life she thought she had. Patricia tries to smile through her tears. "Lily," she says, her voice breaking. "Oh, sweetheart, it's really you." Jessica flinches at the name. "I'm sorry," she says quietly. "I don't remember you." Patricia nods, wiping her eyes. I know, baby, and that's okay. We're just so happy you're alive. We've been looking for you for so long." David finally finds his voice. "We never stopped, not for a single day. We always believed we'd find you." They talk for an hour. It's awkward, painful, full of long silences and careful words. Patricia tells Jessica about the day she was born, about her favorite foods, about the stuffed rabbit named Clover. She shows Jessica photos, old pictures from 1990, images of a little girl Jessica doesn't recognize, but who is undeniably her. Jessica listens, numb. It feels like they're talking about someone else, some other little girl, not her. But as the call goes on, something shifts inside her. Patricia mentions a song she used to sing to Lily at bedtime, a lullaby about stars and moonlight. And Jessica freezes because she knows that song. She's heard it before, in dreams maybe, or buried deep in some unreachable corner of her mind. She doesn't say anything, but something cracks open inside her, just a little. When the call ends, Jessica sits alone in the conference room for a long time, staring at the blank screen. She doesn't know what she feels. She doesn't know what to do with any of this. But for the first time, she allows herself to consider the possibility that maybe, just maybe, she is Lily Marie Cooper. And maybe she's been lost for 31 years. In the weeks that follow, the case becomes international news. The story of Lily Cooper, the girl who disappeared in 1990 and found 31 years later living under a false identity, captivates the world. News outlets cover every angle: the abduction, the investigation, the confession, the reunion. Patricia and David do interviews, their faces weathered by decades of grief, but now glowing with tentative hope. They talk about the search, the false leads, the years of not knowing. They talk about the journal Patricia kept, the letters she wrote to Lily every night, the birthday cakes they baked every year. Jessica, still struggling with her identity, declines most interview requests, but she releases a statement through the FBI, thanking everyone for their support and asking for privacy as she navigates this impossible situation. Behind the scenes, the legal proceedings against Carol Hayes move forward. Her public defender argues that she's an elderly woman, that she's already lost her husband, that she's filled with remorse. But the prosecution is unrelenting. They argue that Carol Hayes stole a child, erased her identity, and kept her isolated for decades. They argue that this is one of the most egregious cases of parental abduction in U.S. history. In September 2021, Carol Hayes pleads guilty to all charges. She's sentenced to 5 years in federal prison, the maximum allowed for her age and health. The judge, a woman named Margaret Townsend, reads the sentence with barely concealed anger. "You stole a child's life," Judge Townsend says. "You stole her family. You stole her identity. And you did it not out of necessity, not out of desperation, but out of selfishness. Your grief does not excuse your actions. Nothing excuses your actions." Carol sits quietly, her head bowed. She doesn't argue. She doesn't appeal. She accepts the sentence, and she's led away in handcuffs. For Patricia and David Cooper, the sentence feels both too harsh and not harsh enough. They don't want revenge. They just want their daughter back. But getting Lily back is more complicated than anyone anticipated. Because Jessica Martin, legally, does not exist. Her entire identity is fraudulent. Her social security number, her driver's license, her bank accounts, everything is tied to a name and a history that were fabricated. The FBI works with the Social Security Administration, the Oregon DMV, and various federal agencies to untangle the mess. Jessica is issued a new Social Security number under her legal name, Lily Marie Cooper. Her driver's license is reissued. Her financial accounts are transferred. It's a bureaucratic nightmare, and it takes months to sort out. But the harder part is the emotional untangling. Jessica agrees to meet her biological parents in person in July 2021, about 2 months after the DNA results came back. The meeting is held in a neutral location, a therapist's office in Portland, with a counselor present to help facilitate. Patricia and David fly out from Pennsylvania. They're nervous, terrified, hopeful. They've waited 31 years for this moment, but now that it's here, they don't know what to do with it. Jessica is equally terrified. She's agreed to this meeting because intellectually she understands these people are her parents, but emotionally she feels nothing. They're strangers. The meeting is gentle, careful. Patricia and David don't push. They don't demand anything. They just sit across from Jessica and tell her stories. About the day she was born, about her first steps, about the time she tried to feed Clover the rabbit actual carrots and got upset when he wouldn't eat them. Jessica listens, and slowly pieces start to click into place. Not memories exactly, but feelings, sensations. The smell of Patricia's perfume is familiar. The way David laughs sounds like something she's heard before. By the end of the meeting, Jessica is crying, not because she remembers, but because she's grieving. Grieving the life she could have had, the family she should have known, the 31 years that were stolen from all of them. Patricia holds her, and Jessica lets her, and for the first time she feels a connection, faint, fragile, but real. Over the next several months, Jessica begins the long, painful process of rebuilding her relationship with her biological family. She talks to Patricia and David on the phone every week. She visits them in Pennsylvania twice, staying in their childhood home, sleeping in the bedroom they never changed. It's surreal. The room is frozen in time. The same Sesame Street posters on the walls, the same toy box in the corner. Patricia even kept Clover, the stuffed rabbit, all these years. Jessica holds the rabbit, and something flickers. Not a memory, but an echo of one. She can almost see herself, small and blonde, clutching this rabbit, laughing at something. But the memory doesn't fully form. It stays just out of reach. Therapists tell her this is normal. Childhood amnesia, combined with trauma and the deliberate suppression of her early memories, means she may never fully remember her life before the abduction. And that's okay. She doesn't need to remember to move forward. But Jessica struggles with her identity. She's legally Lily Marie Cooper now, but she doesn't feel like Lily. She feels like Jessica. That's the name she's known for 31 years. That's the person she became. After months of therapy and soul-searching, she makes a decision. She'll keep the name Jessica in her daily life, but she'll legally reclaim Lily Marie as part of her identity. A hyphenated name, maybe, or a middle name. She hasn't decided yet. But she wants to honor both parts of herself, the girl she was and the woman she became. Patricia and David struggle with this at first. They want their Lily back, but their therapist helps them understand that Lily, the 4-year-old girl they lost, doesn't exist anymore. She grew up. She became someone else, and that someone else is standing in front of them now, trying to find her way. So they let go of the fantasy, and they start building a relationship with the real person, with Jessica, who was also Lily, who is both and neither. It's messy and complicated and painful, but it's also real. By early 2022, Jessica has relocated to Pennsylvania. She rents an apartment 20 minutes from her parents' house, close enough to visit regularly, but far enough to maintain her independence. She gets a job at a local nonprofit, working with missing and exploited children. It's hard work, emotionally draining, but it feels meaningful. She's building a new life, or maybe reclaiming an old one. She's not sure which. She still thinks about Frank and Carol sometimes. Despite everything, despite the lies and the abduction and the stolen decades, she can't help but feel a complicated grief for them. They were her parents in the only way she knew, They raised her. They loved her in their broken, selfish way. But they also destroyed her life. She visits Carol in prison once, in late 2022. She doesn't know why she goes. Maybe for closure. Maybe to ask questions. Maybe just to see her one last time. Carol is frail now, her health declining rapidly. She looks at Jessica with tears streaming down her face and says, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." Jessica doesn't forgive her. She's not sure she ever will, but she tells Carol that she's trying to move forward, that she's building a relationship with her real family, that she's going to be okay. Carol nods, sobbing. "That's all I ever wanted, for you to be okay." Jessica leaves the prison and doesn't look back. Carol Hayes dies in January 2023, 6 months before her sentence is up. A heart attack, the prison officials say. She's 76 years old. Jessica doesn't attend the funeral, but she plants a tree in her backyard, a small cherry blossom in memory of the woman who raised her. Not because she forgives her, but because grief is complicated and healing isn't linear. As of 2024, Jessica is still living in Pennsylvania. She's close with her parents now, though the relationship is different than it would have been if she'd never been taken. They're rebuilding, slowly, one conversation at a time. She's dating someone, a kind man named Aaron, who works as a teacher. He knows her story, all of it, and he loves her anyway. She's thinking about writing a book, about her experience, about what it's like to discover your entire life is a lie, about the long road to reclaiming your identity. But she's not ready yet, maybe someday. For now, she's just living, day by day, step by step. And every year on July 13th, the anniversary of the day she was taken, her and her parents light a candle, not for the girl who was lost, but for the woman who was found. Because Lily Marie Cooper is home. After 31 years, she's finally home. But the question that haunts everyone who knows this story, the question that lingers long after the news cameras go away and the headlines fade, is this: how many Lilies are out there? How many children were taken by people they trusted, raised under false names, living lives built on lies, and they don't even know it? The FBI estimates there are hundreds, maybe thousands, of long-term parental abductions in the United States, cases where a non-custodial parent or family friend takes a child and disappears, cases where the child, over time, forgets their real identity. Most of these cases are never solved. Lily Cooper was one of the lucky ones. She was found. She survived. She got a second chance. But for every Lily Cooper, there are dozens of children who stay lost, who grow up never knowing who they really are, who live entire lives as someone else. And that's the chilling reality this case forces us to confront. Because the monsters in this story weren't strangers lurking in the shadows, they were neighbors, friends, people you'd invite to a barbecue, people you'd trust with your child. And that's what makes this case so terrifying. Because if it could happen to Lily Cooper, it could happen to anyone. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching. This case is a reminder of why we do this work, why we tell these stories, why we never stop searching. If this video moved you, please consider liking and subscribing. We cover cases like this every week, and your support helps us shine a light on the stories that deserve to be told. Lily's case had a rare ending, but so many others are still waiting. Let's keep their names alive.